Hello class. For this video, I'll introduce the concept of economic models. So, when we're trying to model something, we're trying to approximate reality. I'm trying to explain something that we observe in the world in the most simple way possible. Kind of what you think about when you think about something like fashion models. Now, we understand that most people don't look like fashion models, right? But when you look at the clothing and what they're modeling, this is how the clothing should fit, for example, right? It doesn't mean that it's going to fit exactly like that on you, but that is what the fashion designer expects the clothing to look like on somebody when they put it on. Okay? This is not reality. This is a simplification of reality. So in a similar way, that is what we're going to do in economics class. We're going to take what we see in the real world and we're going to simplify it while still trying to explain something and how the natural world works. Okay? So let's talk about our first model, which is the circular flow model. Right? Now, what are we trying to explain that we observe in the world? Okay? So think about a young sibling or a cousin, or if you have children, think of this very simple question. How do you buy me toys? Right? That is a question that I get from my two little kids that I have here at home. How do you buy me toys? In a way, they're asking, how does the economy work? Right? How does the economy work? Now, that is a very complicated question. Think about all the interactions that we see in an economy. We have people going to work, right? And then in that, we have people doing all kinds of work, right? We have the banking system, we have the government, we have people from other parts of the world interacting with us in the economy. Now, all of this would be too complicated to explain to a toddler, to an infant, right? But we can still simplify it enough so that we can explain the general idea of this to, let's say, a 5-year-old. Okay? So, the way that you would describe it probably would be, right? I go to work. I get paid. And then I buy the toys. Right? This is a very simple explanation, and usually that will get you out of, that will give enough information to the kid so that they go on and play with their toys, right? That is basically a simple model. I go work, I get paid, I go buy stuff, right? So in a similar way, we're going to make it a little bit more complicated because now we're in college, right? So how does the economy work? So take two things that you have learned from your readings and the PowerPoint presentations in this class. All right, we have we're gonna cover two entities that are gonna interact with each other. Okay, on this side we're gonna put the household, which is basically you, me, your family, right? And on this side we're gonna have the firm, which is a fancy way of saying businesses, firms. Okay? And they're going to interact in two types of markets. Okay? We're going to interact in the product market. What is the product market? The product market is where we go buy goods and services, where you go buy your food, when you go buy your clothing, when you go buy a car, you are interacting in the product market. If you think about the example I gave with the 5-year-old, right? This is this part. That's the product market because that's where I go buy the toys, right? But what about the other part? This part. Well, this part is the resource market. Right? So, I also interact in a business, for example, right? I go to work at school, at a college. That is the firm. I am the household, the college is the firm. I go work, I get paid. That happens in the resource market. Okay? So we have two entities, the household and the firms, and we have two markets. And we're going to briefly explain how the economy works. Let's think about our statement here. It's related to this. I go to work, right? So that basically means that I am going to draw that as an arrow. I go to work. So I'm providing my labor, right? But that's not the only thing that I'm going to be providing. I could also provide my capital, right? I could also provide my land, right? This is not like, these are just a couple interactions that could happen, and they are gonna go to the business, right? So, resources. Resources have to go to the business, right? Moving forward, what does the firm do with those resources? Well, they behave in what we call production. Production of what? Of goods and services. Goods and services. Okay? So that's how the economy works, right? Households go to work. They take the resources to the companies. The companies turn those resources into production, into goods and services. Now let's talk about this part in the middle. The I get paid, right? So where does that happen? Well, that can happen in the middle circle, right? Who gets paid? Well, the firm pays me, right? And this is where you're going to have your wages, your profit, your rent, all these terms that we covered in the previous video. Okay? And so what do I do with that money? Well, I go buy something at a store. Right? Payment. Right? Purchasing. Right? So this is how the economy works in a very simplistic way, right? So how does the economy work? Well, I go work, right? That happens in this bottom side, right here. I go to work. Let me make this bigger. I go to work. I provide resources to the firm. The firm turns them into production. And then we get goods and services. All right, let's look at the inside circle. Well, what do you get for going to work? I get my wages. The wages go to the household, and then the household uses that money for payment of goods and services, for purchasing things, clothing, food. This is the simple way that the economy works. This is what we call an economic model. A simplification of reality to help us understand what happens in the world. Now notice, this is super simplified. We're talking about the economy. You don't see the government here. You don't see people from outside the United States, international trade. You don't see banks either. But with this, we get a fair understanding of how the economy works.